So here is a short demonstration on some of the capabilities of WX maxima when one deals with functions of a single variable with an attempt to maybe calculate their derivative, as well as plotting the function and perhaps a derivative. So you click on the worksheet and you start typing. So something like f of x colon equal. Let's go with a simple function, the sine of x. Okay, semicolon at the end. Let's go ahead and do a shift enter. Maxima responds by telling us that everything is understood. Okay, we go to the next level and type FP of x. It's another definition we do here, and what we're going to type is we're going to type diff for differentiation of the function f of x with respect to x. Do a semicolon, shift enter. Okay, we get this. It looks like maxima maybe didn't do anything, but actually it did, because if we come and open a new cell and start typing fp of x and put a semicolon here and do a shift enter, we see that maxima has indeed calculated the derivative, and here it is. So the next thing we could do is perhaps attempt to plot the function as well as the derivative within the same graph. So we could, there are several ways of performing graphs in WX maxima. Let's look at one. We could use WX plot2d, so we're basically plotting in 2D. And what are we plotting? Well, I would like to plot two functions actually. So because I'm plotting two functions and I'm using the plot2d command, you have to follow a certain protocol, and you have to list the functions as f of x. That would refer to the sine function basically. And fp of x, that would refer to, of course, its derivative. You would close the bracket, and then you would want to give yourself a sort of a window of graphing, a graphing window in terms of size. So you would first of all account for x, and you would want to say, well, okay, I'm going to plot in the interval from 0 to 2 pi. Okay, now you have to realize that pi is a reserved constant. And so in order for maxima to recognize it, that indeed we mean pi 3.14, we would have to type %pi. Okay, and that's how you do it. That's how you indicate that x would be within the range from 0 to 2 pi. I believe Mathematica uses the same style, so it's not just WX maxima that seems to be maybe unintuitive. You may want to also indicate the height of the window as well, and you may want to go, now you remember that sine operates between -1 and 1 on the range, so you may want to write something like -2, 2, close, and then put your parenthesis and a semicolon. And now you go ahead and do a shift enter, and you get all sorts of errors. All sorts of errors. What are some of the errors that we see? Well, for one thing, right off the bat here, there is something about some fussing about pi. And the actual error is right here, in between 2 and pi. Now remember, in WX maxima, pi is written as %pi. So you have to actually indicate, let the machine know that this is a multiplication of 2 times pi. Now, besides this, I'm not sure I have made another mistakes, but maybe I have. I'm scanning through. I seem to have all of my parentheses okay, because I start with WX plot2d. I got open parentheses, and eventually I close it. Here I've got the information about y. Here I've got the information about x. and here I have f of x and fp of x, which are both been defined up here. So I'm going to try again, shift enter, and this time it looks like everything is working. Maxima is calculating. You see that information down below, and here it is. We're getting the graph of sine of x in blue and the cosine of x in red. You remember that cosine of x is a derivative. Notice in passing that the derivative crosses the x-axis. In other words, it has an x-intercept when the function sine of x has over here what would be called the local maximum. Notice that here the sine function has a local minimum, and again the derivative crosses the x-axis. Also notice that when the sine function is increasing in that section right there, it turns out to be from 0 to actually pi over 2. The derivative is positive. What we mean by that is that the derivative is above the x-axis. Again, coming here, we notice that the sine function is increasing. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong part. This is the sine function. You see that the sine function is increasing in that section right there. Again, correspondingly, over the same interval, notice that the derivative is positive. So, be careful. We're talking about the blue curve, the function f of x, increasing, and we're pointing out that over such intervals, the derivative is above the x-axis. In other words, positive. Notice also that when the sine function, the f function, is decreasing, and it's doing it right here, basically between what? Between pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. The sine function is decreasing. Notice that over that interval, from pi over 2 to 3 pi over 2, the derivative function is below the x-axis. What I've told you is fairly profound, and you have to really accustom your brain to it, because we're talking about the blue curve increasing or decreasing versus the red curve, which is a derivative, being positive or negative. So it's a little bit like apple and oranges, okay? In other words, increasing, decreasing for the function f of x, and positive or negative for the derivative. Okay, if you remove the wx up here and you just type plot3d and you do a shift enter, then in that particular case what happens is, instead of getting the graph, and I guess what you would call an inline graph, in other words a graph within the worksheet, at that moment you have a special window that opens, and maybe it gives you more capability because you can adjust things maybe a little bit better to your liking, but you get again the same information that we had mentioned before. So and then if you do use a route of not putting wx and windows are going to open, you will notice that sometimes something seems strange, and it would seem like wx maxima, it doesn't want to plot something, and you're wondering why. You see, while you think you've done everything properly, and that's probably because you have a window, a graphic window that's open, and sometimes you have to close it before wx maxima can actually go and perform whatever the next graph is. So I probably will have the occasion of repeating this in the future, but you may want to keep that in mind. One final note, there are other ways of graphing using, for example, the command draw2d. And if you use a draw2d, for one thing you have to load a special library, and then the symbolics, the formalism that you use, the syntax that you use to actually enter the information that you want to plot is a little bit different. You don't use brackets, and we will have an example of this in maybe some other movie. Thank you.